Thanks for tuning in to our podcast series Scaling Without Borders. As a pan-European PR agency, we've supported many companies in their journey to expand to other markets. In this series, we take a deep dive into how scale-ups can grow their business beyond their home country. We'll shed a light on this challenge from different perspectives. Entrepreneurs who have already successfully done this, the investor community funding these ambitious people, and the startup ecosystem supporting them. This first season we focus on the Dutch scale-up community. What are their insights on how to scale abroad successfully? All to inspire other entrepreneurs to perhaps do the same. Hello and welcome to Scaling Without Borders. In this podcast series, we interview some of Europe's leading experts in the startup community to learn from their experience and understand their vision on how to successfully grow a startup or scale up across borders. In today's episode, we're joined by Lieke Conijn, startup liaison at the Dutch Embassy in London. In that position, she can be considered the center of the scaling up ecosystem, especially for Dutch companies looking to go to the UK. And she has been a source of information for many entrepreneurs wanting to grow their company across borders. And she is a well-known face for anyone who has visited startup conferences throughout Europe or joined one of the many trading missions she co-hosted. We're looking forward to hearing her insights and learnings over this time in this episode. I'm Erik, and a senior partner at Tyto, and I'm joined by Chantal, who's a senior partner as well.
Thank you, Erik, and welcome to the Scaling Without Borders podcast, Lieke. Great to have you. So maybe it might be good to know a bit more about your role first. So you're a startup liaison. So what exactly do you do? What role do you play for companies that want to expand in the UK?
Well, first of all, Chantal and Erik, thank you very much for having me in this podcast. We always find it really great that we can tell a little bit more about what we do, so that companies learn that we are here. What is my role? I'm specifically here for the Dutch startup ecosystem in London, who want to grow their startup or scale up even in the UK. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs about 5 years ago, 4 years, have decided that startup ecosystems are really different from helping normal SME companies. So has decided to have 6 startup liaisons over the world in the hubs where we believe that most Dutch startups would like to grow or take their first steps into international growth. And that is next to London, is that Paris, Berlin, Singapore, New York, and Silicon Valley / San Francisco. You could see us as the first point of contact for startups when they start to grow internationally, so that they have a point which they can contact with questions they have, with problems they have, but also maybe just to let us know that they are starting in that country to do business. We can do network introductions from our own network or from networks that we can rely on. We can connect them with people within the ecosystem, but also, for example, I have an own mentoring network that we have built up over the years here, so we can bring them in contact with one of the mentors. And we can also still learn them a little bit in how to do business for me then here in the UK.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying. And so what if a company decides to expand to the UK? So at what stage do they typically reach out to you?
I must say that it's very different. But normally we would say that the ideal stage to come with contacting us is from around seed, so seed round. Why is that the ideal stage? Because we believe that international growth, if you start in a new country, you have to have already a company that is a little bit stable in the Netherlands and has a little bit of body in the Netherlands. because international growth takes time and it costs money. It's really an investment, so you have to have that investment there to do so. And experience learns that starts from around seed funding and up. But it depends a little bit on the sectors. There are certainly startups that come earlier who are not maybe looking for investment, but certainly looking for partnerships or working together with other spin-offs from universities, etc. So it depends a little bit.
Okay, and you already mentioned that you like to talk about what you're actually doing, because not a lot of people know about this. And entrepreneurs, they are known to be a little bit stubborn every now and then, and tend to do everything themselves. How do you deal with that? And is it something you recognize? And what would you advise?
I would say the fact that they contact me makes them a little bit less stubborn, because then at least they recognize, like, oh, maybe there is somebody who could help me. But certainly Dutch entrepreneurs, even maybe a little bit more than other entrepreneurs, are very stubborn and think that they know what to do and how to do it. So our experience is normally also in a Dutch way to tell them blunt, like, okay, yeah, you can think that it's that way, but that doesn't work here. And that normally makes them listen a little bit more. But that is also why I always try to find a founder or a contact of us who has done it all here already, and tell them from their experience what they should do or how they should make it different. Because I do still realize that you could say I am still a civil servant working on an embassy. What do I know? But if they hear it from somebody who has done it all, the message comes clearer over than by me. That makes them certainly less stubborn.
That's good to hear. What about the general business climate, especially in the Netherlands? Now, there's a lot of talk amongst entrepreneurs that it's becoming less favorable in the Netherlands to build a company here. Is there a similar sentiment going on in the UK, or?
I think that in both countries, of course, we had elections not so long ago, and both countries have now new governments. So the sentiment here is a little bit of waiting, see what Labour is going to do, and the big moment for that will be their autumn budget, which will arrive at the end of October. It looks like they're going to make some changes, of which the startup ecosystem will not be really happy. And one of the big ones in that is the gain tax that they will start to hire. I think for governments, it's always difficult to satisfy entrepreneurs and businesses, because they probably never do it as they would like to do it. And I also believe that if we compare Europe in general with the States, that the climate for business and for entrepreneurs is still much better in the US than it is here in Europe. But I also believe that all governments in Europe, and that includes the Dutch government and the UK government, are really aware of the importance of startups and scale-ups for their economic growth and for their future, and also for in solving a lot of the problems that we have at the moment in the world. So that will always give them the focus to try to make the best way for startups and scale-ups.
Okay, well, of course, you can't have a conversation about entrepreneurs in the UK without talking about Brexit. So, how do you think Brexit has changed the willingness of companies to establish themselves in the UK? So, what are currently the biggest hurdles to do so?
I would say that unfortunately Brexit came together with COVID, in the sense of that when we really started Brexit, we still also had the problems of COVID, which meant that in the beginning it was very difficult to see what was the real effect of Brexit. By now, I would say that for trade in goods, certainly a lot has changed. There has to be filled in forms. You can't bring goods that easy anymore to the UK or vice versa. So there we certainly see an impact. In services and for the tech sector, I would say that the effect has been less than everybody anticipated. I would say that all companies waited a little bit to see like, okay, what is going to happen in real life? But now that phase has been gone, and I think that we still see that a lot of startups and scale-ups from all over the world, not only from the Netherlands, are still very willing to come here to the UK. That has certainly to do with the fact that the UK itself, of course, is a really big market. And for the Netherlands, it also is very close by. It's a big market, but it's also still a setup for the rest of the world. I always say London is the only world city that we have here in Europe, and it didn't lose that after Brexit. So the whole world is here, and that makes it also, when you are here, it makes it also easier to do business in other countries too. So I would say that for services, the effect is not that big. The only, I think, really big difference, of course, is the fact that you can't work here without a visa anymore. And that is certainly something that I noticed, that in the beginning, we could see that Dutch founders would come here for 6 months or maybe a year if they decided to make the steps here to see how it worked and build up their own network. That is not possible anymore now. So they have to make quicker a decision to hire people here if you want to be here on the ground, and you can't bring the people from the Netherlands very easy. So that is, I would say, the biggest difference, and that could be a problem.
So do you think that could also be beneficial then? I mean, also for the English labor market, obviously, but also beneficial in terms of doing business with local UK people. That would work better, I reckon, than Dutch people doing business with English people. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that is certainly something that a lot of startups have learned. I would say a few years ago, they all started with Dutch people here and then tried to build a business from there. And most of the startups realized, sometimes frustrating after years or a year, that it is indeed better to have a local person here, because they bring in their knowledge about the market. They bring in the knowledge about, they bring normally also their own network. And how to do business here. So I would say it is certainly an advantage that they are now more forced to say like, okay, I have to hire somebody immediately who can work in the UK, which normally would mean for now that it's an English person. But it is also harder to find that, because it's very difficult to find a person that you want to build out your company that is here. And even in COVID times, they couldn't come to the Netherlands. So you have somebody here who doesn't know the company really, but has to build the company here. But I think a lot of companies are trying and finding solutions to overcome that.
Okay. And so you just talked about how you have 6 other hubs and counterparts in other cities who are helping Dutch entrepreneurs expanding abroad. So do you think, also hearing from their experience, that the UK for Dutch companies is kind of the obvious market to expand to first, or how would you?
If it is first, it depends a little bit on the sector. There are certainly, I think, sectors or services that the UK is a really good step, and an important thing of that is, of course, the language. I do a lot with edtech companies from the Netherlands, so educational technology companies. For them, the UK is a very easy and logic first step, because then they can keep everything in English. certainly in education. If you go to Germany, you have to do it all in German. If you go to France, you have to do it all in France. So then if you go to the UK, you can do it in English. Then it is also more logical to go after that to the US or to Australia or to New Zealand. It opens up a lot of English countries. So then it is a very logical step to do that. And again, the UK is a big market. We have always been in the top 5 of trade nations with the UK anyway. And for services, we are already for a long time in the top 3 from each other. So yes, I would say that still the UK is one of the best markets to start your international growth. But again, it depends a little bit on what you want. And we see that for Germany, it accounts the same. Still, a lot of startups are making the step next door. So no changes there because of Brexit. And the language, like I said, a lot of Dutch people speak English, so that makes it also easier for them to make that step to here.
Yeah, perhaps it's a no-brainer, but is it always a good idea to go and scale abroad? I mean, there are a lot of opportunities in maybe the Dutch economy as well.
Again, it depends a little bit on what your mission is and what your aim is. I always say you can be successful if you just stay in the Netherlands and don't want to be what a lot of people always say with startups. Oh, they want to be the next Spotify or the Netflix or the next Amazon. You don't always have to be that to build a successful company. So I'm certainly convinced that there will be startups that just could stay in the Netherlands and have a really successful company. But if you are looking for more growth, the Netherlands is a small market in comparison with a lot of other countries. So then it is almost impossible to do that only in the Netherlands. And also, if you really are looking for more investment money, then again, you have to look over the borders to get that probably. And then again, England is one of the best countries in the first place to have a look for that too. So I would say, if you really want to grow, the Netherlands is just too small.
And of course, there's a growing market for remote working. Is it always necessary to have an entity in markets abroad, or could you say no? We have specialized people, for instance, talents in the UK, and you can use those people to build a business there as well.
I think you see a combination. So I see certainly in the beginning that the Dutch companies don't start immediately, as it is called here, an LTD, and work just with remote people who are working for the Dutch company, but then located here. In the end, it can have big advantages to have an LTD here. For example, for taxes. If we go back to the investment, you have here really good tax investment rules for seed money. But for that, you have to be an LTD. Otherwise, the investors can't use this rule. So they will only invest if you have an LTD here. So that can be a reason to have to start an LTD here. I would also say that I always call it eating from the two sides, or making use of two sides. If you have an LTD here, the British will see you very quickly as an English company too. So if there are interesting missions from the English, then you could join them too. So I always say, like, look, that could be very, very good for you to do that. But sometimes it takes a little bit longer before they realize that is the point.
Talking about investments, do you typically see that Dutch companies do an investment round in the Netherlands and then go abroad, or do they reach out to a UK investor and try to build a market in that way?
I think that if they really want to grow, we see that they go abroad for the investment, but we also see more and more combinations of investors. But then mainly the head investor is or a VC here from the UK or from the US or from somewhere else, and they work together with some Dutch VCs. But I would say if you want more money, so let me say from around Series B, maybe a big Series A, you see more and more combinations, and you see more and more that foreign investment is involved. And then I think as Europe's, we should try to get more European investment into it, because I always find it a little bit scary if it is too much American or other ways, because that could mean in the end that you are losing the companies to that they go in the end still that direction. And then certainly in deep tech startups, yeah, we are losing sometimes too much of the knowledge and the technologies that we could develop here.
Okay, thanks. So we have several examples of Dutch companies being successful abroad. Is there a typical way of doing business, or the typical Dutch way of doing business? Yeah, like a secret sauce that makes us successful abroad?
Yeah, a secret sauce. I think that the successful companies have had a really good look about their market fit. So I think that the successful companies really look like, do I fit into the UK market? And they can do that because I think that the Netherlands are known for speaking English very well. So that is certainly helps in doing the business here. I think also our directness is sometimes can help us sometimes, but it's also sometimes against us. But certainly the English people are now used in the fact of our directness and that we tell how it is straight away. So they are used to that. Sometimes I think that we still should take it slower than we do. But it also can help you in doing business because you are quicker and say like, okay, if that's what you want to do, then that's what we're going to do. And the Netherlands is well known for its innovation and for its design and good work. So that is also helping, I think, in the successful companies.
Okay. So in the beginning of this conversation, we also talked about how entrepreneurs can be a bit stubborn, not looking for help. So what are like common pitfalls you see happening?
I think that the pitfalls are that there is not enough perseverance, and patience. The Dutch are not well known for their patience, but international growth is asking for patience. It takes a long time before you can have your first customer here. Also because doing business here is in a slower and more hierarchic process than it is in the Netherlands. So it takes longer before you have your first contract, before you start really working here. So I can see that a lot of Dutch startups are giving up maybe too early because they think that it takes too long. So that is, I think, that is one. The other one is, we talked already about it, is market fit or product fit. I think that there are still a lot of companies that are coming here and they have a service or maybe a product which works really well in the Netherlands, and they want to implement it here in the UK in exactly the same way as they did in the Netherlands. But that most of the time doesn't work because the market is just maybe a little bit different, or the product has to be just a little bit, your story has to be a little bit different, or your pitch has to be a little bit different. So that is also something that they have to learn, like, okay, how do I do that? And that is certainly something that we see and which they have to learn in how to change it. And again, then they have to adapt to that. So not being stubborn, but adapt in the way that they see like, okay, I have to change that because otherwise I'm not getting anywhere.
Yeah, so lots of research, fine-tuning, and then being flexible to adapt.
Yes. I have an example of a Dutch company that had a service for hospitals, but they noticed that when they installed it in a hospital, and then they were there and they helped, and then they left, and then there was actually nobody in the hospital who had the time or the knowledge to work with their service. So then it died out anyway, and the hospital didn't in the end buy their service. So they looked at that, and then they completely changed it. So now it is more a product for the patients. So the patients are using the product. So I will not say rebuild it, but they certainly adapt to the situation. And now they are growing very successful because now the hospitals are buying their services because they can give it to their patients and they don't have to work with it directly, but the patients will do that. So that is an example of an adaptation that took a while, but brings them the success now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So they even came up with a different use case for their products then.
Yes.
So, with so much experience and having talked to so many entrepreneurs, what would be your main advice or your closing thoughts at the end of this podcast, at least? What are the things you wanna as a takeaway for the listeners?
I tell a lot this story because I think that also a lot of Dutch companies that are coming here are saying like, oh, I'm really successful in the Netherlands. I have this company as a customer and this. So I'm coming here to the UK, and then they want to start, I always say, in the Premier League of the UK business. So on the top, like, yeah, I'm ready for that. I'm going for that. And then I always make the story like, you should maybe be a little bit more like Virgil van Dijk, the successful Dutch footballer who is now playing with Liverpool, but he didn't start at Liverpool. When he decided that he wanted to go to England, he first started in Scotland at Celtic, so not even in the Premier League, but did really, really well. And then by 1.5 years later, he was bought by Southampton, which is, let me say, in the middle in the Premier League for years. So not at the top, but he's in the Premier League doing, again, really, really well. And then 2 years later, he was bought by Liverpool. By then, he was their most expensive defender they ever bought. And the sense of that story is maybe it is better to build it all up. You don't start at the top because it is extremely difficult to get there. And like I said, the whole world is here. So everybody wants to be at those companies or at that top. And then why would they talk with you? They don't know you. You are really small. So that is really, really, really difficult. But if you build it up and start on a lower level, trying to get maybe some SMEs here, and certainly in big countries like the UK, a big SME can still be a reasonably very big company. So start there and move your way up in that way. And I think that is still very important for a lot of Dutch companies like that accounts the same. You don't always have to be in London. You could also start somewhere else in the UK where you have cheaper labor, you have more opportunities. Start there instead of in London to make the process a little bit more easier for yourself too.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you, Lieke, for giving us an insight into the help you offer to those who are willing and daring to make the jump across the pond. I think we can assume that everybody who wants to make this or has this ambition can give you a call.
Yes, they can.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I hope our listeners enjoyed this conversation with Lieke as much as we did. And if you want to know more about scaling up, please tune in for other episodes in this series. And if you have any feedback on this episode, contact the Tyto team on LinkedIn or comment on the video episode of this podcast on YouTube. And of course, you can also drop us an email at hello@tytopr.com. Thanks for listening and see you soon.